Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we continue with a new chapter in the story of Hoai, the girl who has overcome countless challenges to regain her confidence and build a peaceful life for herself. After months of tireless studying, Hoai finally graduated from her supplementary education program, surrounded by the heartfelt congratulations of Hung and little Tony. The moment she held that certificate in her hands, her eyes turned red, not only from joy, but from the feeling that she had just opened a new door in her life, a door she never believed she would be able to reach. Now, Hoai can read, write, and understand fundamental knowledge to view the world with a more confident mindset. Things that seem simple to others, reading a sign, writing her own name, or understanding basic information, were huge milestones for her. Her graduation brought not only pride, but also ignited a burning desire within her to contribute to her little family. She didn't want all the burdens to fall on Hung's shoulders. Seeing him work tirelessly every day, taking care of her, taking care of Tony, managing both his job and their family, made her heart ache with both guilt and gratitude. So the very moment she gained basic literacy and understanding, one thought came to her mind. She had to work. She had to help him. They had to become true partners, supporting each other equally. During Tony's therapy sessions, instead of sitting and waiting like before, Hoai began walking around the neighborhood, looking for places that might be hiring. She approached store after store, sometimes nervously, afraid of being turned away, but her honesty, her determined eyes, and her polite manner left an impression, and soon a small supermarket near the therapy center agreed to hire her as a trainee cashier. In just a few days, everyone at the supermarket was surprised by how quickly she improved. Tasks that seemed complicated at first were mastered by Hoai in no time. She counted money carefully, pressed the keys accurately down to the last digit, never off by even a single coin. Every time a customer approached, she bowed politely and greeted them with a soft, sincere smile. Even on days when she had to stand for hours, or when the store was so busy her shoulders ached from exhaustion, Hoai never complained. She never frowned or showed frustration. Instead, she worked even harder, because deep down she believed this was the first step to changing her life, to helping build the future she wanted for her family. Her dedication and eagerness to learn gradually won everyone's affection. From longtime staff to the manager, everyone noticed something special about her. A girl who came from almost nothing, yet possessed a strong will and a kind, genuine heart. Perhaps that was why she felt like a gentle breeze in the workplace, bringing warmth and comfort to those around her. And from this moment on, Hoai's life begins to turn to a brand new chapter, filled with hope and with challenges quietly waiting ahead. At the end of that workday, when the other employees had already left their counters to prepare for closing, the once peaceful atmosphere of the supermarket suddenly grew heavy. The manager, usually calm, strict, and meticulous, frowned the moment he opened the cash drawer for the final check. Just seconds later, his face drained of color. Shock flickered in his eyes before it hardened into overwhelming tension. A large amount of money was missing, 10 million dong. It should have been neatly stored in the second compartment, where the manager and Hoai kept important daily revenue. But now the compartment was completely empty. Not a single bill left. What made everything spiral further into chaos was the cruel chain of facts that followed. There were only 2 keys that could open the drawer. One belonged to the manager, the other belonged to Hoai. Not only that, when the police arrived for a preliminary inspection, they found only Hoai's fingerprints on the lock, clear, distinct fingerprints, right at the point where the lock was turned, exactly as if she was the one who had opened it before the money disappeared. And even more shocking, when the technical staff checked the security cameras, the footage from noon to late afternoon had been completely erased. No images remained, no recordings to prove her innocence, no evidence to point to the real culprit. This left every gaze in the supermarket slowly shifting toward the small girl standing quietly in a corner, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Every detail, every piece of evidence pointed at Hoai like a cold, merciless blade. She stood frozen. Her mind felt as if someone had struck it with a hammer, leaving her unable to think. People around her whispered, some sympathetic, others suspicious. Their stares tightened her chest, her fingers whitening as they clenched together. She wanted to say she didn't do it. She wanted to explain that during the entire counting period she had stayed at her station and never left. But the words tangled in her throat, refusing to come out. The injustice stung her eyes. She didn't even understand what was happening. Yet the world had already turned against her in a matter of minutes. Then a police officer stepped forward, his voice firm but composed. "Ms. Hoai, please come with us to the station to provide a statement. This is only a necessary procedure." Only a procedure. But to Hoai, those words felt like someone pushing her over the edge of a bottomless cliff. Before following them, she managed to grip her bag tightly, her voice trembling as she forced out one request. "Please, let me call Mr. Hung. He needs to pick up Tony for me." Her eyes turned red again, not because she feared for herself, but because she feared for her son, the little boy waiting for his mother after therapy, completely unaware that his mother's world had collapsed in the blink of an eye. At the end of the workday, while everyone was preparing to lock their counters, the air inside the supermarket suddenly tightened, as if an invisible string had been pulled taut across the room. The manager opened the cash drawer to do the usual end-of-day count, but only a few seconds after looking inside, his expression changed completely. The notebook in his hand froze midair, and his eyes widened in disbelief at what he saw. 10 million dong had disappeared. It was the amount carefully stored each day, only handled according to strict procedure. But today, the drawer was empty. Nothing left but cold, hollow space. No one could have imagined something like this happening on a day that seemed just as ordinary as any other. But what was even more frightening was the chain of truths that slowly came to light. Throughout the entire supermarket, only 2 people had keys to that drawer, the manager and Hoai. And when the police arrived for an initial inspection, they discovered that the fingerprints on the lock belonged solely to Hoai. Clear, sharp, perfectly positioned, as though she had been the one who opened it right before the money vanished. Questions began forming in everyone's eyes. Why her? Why only her fingerprints? Did she have a reason to take it? But the worst was yet to come. When the technical staff checked the surveillance system, they found that all camera footage from noon until early evening had been wiped clean. No images left to review, no recordings to confirm who had been near the cashier area, No evidence to prove her innocence or to identify the true culprit. All that remained was a suffocating silence, and countless eyes turning toward Hoai. She stood beside her cashier station, gripping the hem of her shirt so tightly that her fingertips turned white. Her ears buzzed as she listened to the manager explain the situation again, his voice full of disappointment and reluctance. Her mind was blank. Any explanation she wanted to give couldn't even form properly before a wave of dizziness washed over her, as if she were standing in the middle of a winter storm. She didn't do it. She had never touched the drawer except when instructed. She had no idea what was happening. Yet every piece of evidence, every detail, was cruelly pointing straight at her. Fear crept into her chest, mixing with a choking sense of injustice that made her eyes burn. She wanted to speak, to say she had never opened the drawer that day. But as whispers and murmurs spread across the supermarket, her throat tightened. Just then the police approached, their tone polite but firm. "Ms. Hoai, we need to invite you to the station to give a statement. Please cooperate with us." The people around stepped back instinctively, forming a silent circle that made Hoai feel suddenly isolated from the world. Her head buzzed, her heart pounded so hard she had to take a deep breath just to stay steady. In that moment, the first person she thought of wasn't herself. It was Tony. Right now, her son was waiting for his mother after his therapy session, and if she were held for too long, who would take care of him? Hoai looked up at the officers, her voice trembling but trying to stay composed. "Please, let me call Mr. Hung. He has to pick up Tony for me." Her voice cracked, barely more than a whisper in the air. Before leaving the supermarket, her eyes drifted back to the place she had worked for days. The place that had been her little source of pride. Yet in just a moment, everything had changed completely, like a sudden gust tearing through her life. And from that moment on, Hoai knew her life was about to enter a new trial, one no one could have expected to arrive so quickly. When Hung stepped into the police station, the cold air from the long hallway drifted over him. But the first thing that caught his attention wasn't the chill. It was little Tony resting in his arms, eyes wide with confusion as he looked around unfamiliar surroundings. The child didn't understand what was happening. He only clung tighter to Hung, baring his face against him as if sensing the strange atmosphere. And then there was Hoai. She was sitting at the interrogation desk, shoulders drawn in, hands trembling on her lap. Her hair was slightly messy from the wind, and her eyes, her red, swollen eyes, revealed hours of fear, tension, and a crushing sense of injustice with no place to escape. When she heard the familiar footsteps, she looked up. The moment she saw Hung, her lips twitched, trying to form a small, reassuring smile for him. But the smile never made it. It shattered as tears suddenly welled up and streamed down her pale cheeks. Her voice trembled, fragile like a leaf quivering in the wind. "I'm innocent. I really didn't do it." Just one sentence, yet it carried the weight of all the despair she had endured during the interrogation. Hung immediately stepped forward, placing one hand firmly on her shoulder while the other gently patted her back in comfort. His eyes held not a hint of doubt, not a flicker of hesitation. "I know," he said. His voice was low, steady, and unwavering. "I believe you. No matter what happens, I will stand by you." Those words wrapped around her fragile heart like a warm blanket. In a room filled with harsh lights, paper shuffling, and the stern presence of police officers, just a single sentence from him was enough to steady her breathing again, enough to keep her from collapsing entirely. Tony reached out toward his mother too, sensing something wasn't right. Hung lifted him closer so Hoai could touch him. In that moment, the three of them leaned into each other, a small family bracing themselves against a world full of suspicion. But even with Hung by her side, the harsh truth remained. Hoai was the prime suspect. Every piece of evidence seemed to stand against her. The money disappeared during her shift. Her fingerprints were the only ones on the lock. The security footage was erased during the exact time of the incident. Only she and the manager had keys. Yet she was the only one implicated. Too many coincidences. Too many details stacked against her. Enough for anyone to believe she was involved. But was it really that simple? Inside Hung's mind, questions were forming rapidly. The erased camera footage, was it truly a system error? Or did someone deliberately remove the evidence? Her fingerprints, could they have been planted? Could someone have pressed her hand onto the lock without her realizing? Or used something she touched? And the manager, was he truly innocent? He also had a key. He also had access to every restricted area. The more Hung thought, the clearer it became. This incident was far from straightforward. He looked at Hoai, her face full of pain, confusion, and hurt, and silently vowed that he would not let her face this battle alone. The case of the missing money was just beginning. The truth was still hiding somewhere behind the doubts, the strange details, and the gaps no one had filled in yet. Would Hung be able to find the flaw in the mountain of evidence stacked against her? Would Hoai be able to prove her innocence, or would the situation push her further into the shadows? The answers lie ahead. Be sure to watch the next episode to see where the investigation leads and discover who is truly behind this mysterious disappearance.
Mình đang tạo hình ảnh thumbnail nha mọi người. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều vì đã xem video và ủng hộ cho kênh của mình nha. Bữa nay thì lượt xem nó hơi tụt nhưng mà mình vẫn cố gắng để làm video để cho mọi người có thể xem nhiều hơn và ủng hộ cho kênh mình nhiều hơn. Tại vì thường video mình sẽ chia ra làm nhiều phần á. Mình sẽ cho độ phân giải lên 4K nha. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong video sau.